vulnerability is your ability to show your real, true self. All angles, good and bad, and not have any shame in doing it. That's vulnerability. You know, somebody's vulnerability really, let's say, for example, before personal development, before all this information about growth and about, empowerment and all that information on the internet or social media, your vulnerabilities are actually triggered by how you're taught over time growing up, right? If you grew up in an environment where you didn't ever show any skin and that everybody hides their naked body behind closed doors, and that you're taught that the naked body is shame, well, you're going to grow up very vulnerable in exposing any part of you, right? So, I mean, upbringing and your environment growing up is very, very important in determining how vulnerable you are. So vulnerability is such a big subject in terms of breaking it down to your individual self, right? So that's why vulnerability is so different in different layers. Shame is your embarrassment of who you are and how you behave vis-a-vis the outside world. It's how you feel in terms of your connection with the outside world, and shame is when you're embarrassed of yourself. Shame doesn't exist if there's no judgment in that perspective. So there's no shame if there's no judgment and there's no outside world to dictate or to even influence in how you feel. Well, first of all, we never really start off with being ashamed of our own vulnerability. It's taught over time. So it first starts with you seeing yourself in relation to the outside world, right? And then your vulnerability is exposed based on how you gravitate to whatever external forces affect you. So in terms of your vulnerability, in terms of how you are able to distinguish between whether you're ashamed of your vulnerability or not, it's not together. You don't start off, you're not born to be ashamed of your vulnerability, you're taught it. The greatest signs of vulnerability is when somebody triggers you and you just lose your cool. You literally lose your cool. All those emotions start taking control, and you're no longer thinking, you're no longer performing, you're no longer rational. And that is the greatest vulnerability, is when you lose your cool and the other person is not inside of you. So they don't know what's going on. So you have just affected somebody in a negative way. And then after you cool down from your vulnerability explosion, then you come back to the performance. And that's when you think, oh my God, what did I just do? And then you go into this vortex of overthinking, trying to recover. What damage has you done? So you've gone into this crazy psycho thinking and kicking yourself over what has just happened that you had no control over. That's a vulnerability hangover. Vulnerability hangovers are great because it's showing you that it's okay to be imperfect. So how you deal with your vulnerability hangover is key. Because even at 50, I have vulnerability hangovers. They just don't last 2-3 days, right? But they used to last 2-3 days. But over time, I just realized, you know what? I'm not the only one that has these vulnerable moments where I cannot perform, and we're not supposed to be performing. So a vulnerability hangover is just telling you that stop performing, it's okay. And that you just have to learn how to reduce the time of the vulnerability hangover. That's all. Because when your vulnerability hangover kicks in, you're not working anymore. When it happens to somebody you know, just be there for them, talk it through, and just embrace the fact that we're just human. Do not judge. Do not get scared of the person going through a hangover, because it's just a matter of time that they're going to recover. And the faster we support each other, the faster we recover and we learn, so that the next time it happens again, which it will, we're not going to kick ourselves as much.